the mommy guilt. There's a way a woman can.
But it's real though.
It's realer for women who are unable to go out there and do stuff, and they say it's society and system and patriarchy, but it's just them.
Motherhood is not parenting.
The moment you feel like it's motherhood that is holding you back from succeeding, you're not going to be a great mother in that season. And so it's like a cycle. Motherhood is less emotional and more strategic.
I hear you.
Yeah, because the time
with you.
When your children don't want mommy again, they want a mentor and a matron, because who you are as a mother to a 4-year-old is going to be different from who you had to be as a mother to a 14-year-old.
I testify. Mothers are often celebrated for their nurturing and caregiving roles within the family specifically and in society. But their leadership qualities and influence extend far beyond the limits that society tries to put on it. Welcome to the Leading Woman Show Governance Series, brought to you by our sponsors, the National Endowment for Democracy and Luminate. My name is Abosede Jojagan, and today we will discuss the topic, Mothers are Leaders Too. The National Bureau of Statistics in Nigeria reports that 54.5% of women are part of the labor force, with many of them believed to be mothers. By recognizing and empowering mothers as leaders, we can create a more inclusive and equitable society that values the diverse contributions of women in all aspects of life. Now, joining us today as guests to highlight how women can lead and thrive as mothers, and also to identify the support structures and policies that need to be in place for mothers to become and remain leaders. Today we have with us Ijoma Adesanya. She's the founder of Kobicam Africa, a gender advisory and advocacy consultancy that specializes in providing companies with the tools necessary to foster a more gender-inclusive environment in the workplace. Our next guest is Barrister Oyeyemi Emmanuel Aderibibe. She's a lawyer with over 12 years' experience. She's a senior associate at Templars and currently serves as the Financial Secretary and member of the Council of the Section of Business Law of the Nigerian Bar Association. Our final guest is Debola Deji Kurumi, a polymath, best-selling author, keynote speaker, public policy advisor, corporate trainer, and transformational coach for visionary leaders. Now, with this lineup of guests, I'm sure you cannot wait to dive into the conversation, but we'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. So, thank you all so much for being here. Debola, I want to start with you. Today we're talking about the fact that mothers are leaders too. A bit sad that we have to sort of have this topic and actually call it out. But because we know what goes on in society, it's a very important conversation for us to be having. So let's start with how you think motherhood and family responsibilities impact on the careers of women.
I love it. And I love how you're starting out, Abosede, about why we're even having the conversation. It should be so natural. That knowledge should be so ingrained in society that, in fact, motherhood elevates the leadership of a woman and sort of transitions you into a whole different space of responsibility and visioning and even role modeling for the next generation. But yes, sometimes you have to be intentional about that messaging and reorienting society about what is truth. Indeed, I mean, we are keenly aware of the impact that motherhood has on a woman's career, her aspirations, and the ability to sort of show up and be at her best.
Yeah.
I know that there are, from where I stand, about two key pillars of perspectives or lenses that we could be exploring in the conversation. And I feel like one is a lot more serious. The first is just how, on a personal level, when you transition seasons in your life as a person, whether you're a man or woman, those evolutionary journeys that you take call you into a new space in terms of your identity framing, navigating relationships, managing your time, your energy, your resources, finding who you are in the new context and how to be at your best. So that looks to me like a very personal lens in that evolution journey as a
Right.
woman comes into motherhood, right, and comes into motherhood again.
Right.
Because how you are with being a mother to your first is sort of really different to being a mother to your second.
Absolutely.
Being a mother to one is different from being a mother to four. So that lens, and we can go on and on into that conversation as we go today. But the other is the lens of society and culture and the system, the workplace, everything around that external frame that you have to set yourself into and really be able to show up. So it's everything around even the policies of the government, the kind of culture within the workplace, the perspective and perception that employers have of a woman
Right.
who is pregnant or has just had a baby. So we're definitely impacted in many ways.
Yeah.
And the way that I'll close my own opening conversation is, to be honest, I am unable to have a conversation about how to be better in society toward women, especially as far as motherhood is concerned, if we haven't had the conversation about how women have to show up for themselves. There's so many women who lose themselves and who don't know how to outgrow the context of a single life or a life without children. So sometimes it's really also about frame your identity, strengthen your inner core, be a woman of substance, reorder your priorities, manage your time and energy, and build your own support system.
I mean, I really like the way that you're framing it. And what I hear you say is still back to this almost there's an individual
Yes.
effort
Yes.
that happens. And you don't almost want to show up in this new identity and in this new role without having done that work.
So good.
Because then it's almost like it's extra
Yes.
that you have to do when you didn't arrive
So
there.
good.
Amy, what would you say to that?
Oh, it's absolutely correct because there are two sides to the conversation. There's the part we play as individuals, and there's the part that the community plays. What the community does shape how the individual shows up as well.
Sure.
So the perspective mothers have to their role, to their duties, and how they implement it is largely shaped by society.
This is true.
How you mother is probably framed around how your mother did it, or how you see people
How
do
your
it,
grandma, yeah.
or how you think it's supposed to be done. But as DDK said, there's a personal conversation first. And I think that's the power that women must own. That I am a mother, I am a woman, this is my space, this is my territory. I have the right, it's not conferred on me. It's inherent in me to be those things. And I have everything that it takes. So irrespective of the communal conversation, because many times the communal conversations do not reflect the truth. Their cultural inhibitions, their legislative inhibitions. There's even just the fact that the community doesn't see, right? So sometimes it's the mother that does the visioning and gets everybody up to speed to where she's supposed to be or what she's trying to achieve.
I love what you're saying
Yeah.
because what you're saying is that, look, it's my lived experience.
Absolutely.
And there is a limitation on what you can tell me on my own lived experience.
Absolutely.
And if I'm not at the table helping to think through how we can make this experience a better experience for many of us, then you really do a disservice. Thank you so much.
Thank
Ijoma,
you.
what would you say?
Yeah, so even at backstage, I was explaining that it really takes women having the knowledge. So a lot of times when you're a new mom, there's a lot of things that you need to learn.
Yep.
And if you don't learn those things, because even the way that your parents parented will be different from these times, right? What worked then is different from what works now. So understanding those dynamics, being able to, prepare yourself allows you to do better, even in the workplace or, in running your business. But I like what everyone has said in terms of self-government. Self-government is the ability to discipline yourself, and it's the ability to know who you are and where you're trying to go to. Right. And when you have that knowledge, it helps you parent better, and it helps you navigate the different, the different issues that come up in the workplace and, just as a mom in general.
I love that idea. And of course, this series is titled Governance Series. So I really like that idea that you must first self-govern before you start to think about, what we will eventually talk about around how women start to play a role in society as contributors to the governance. So DDK, let me come to you and talk about, you're a mother. And you're a phenomenal leader, not just a leader as yourself, but a leader to leaders. How have you navigated these roles? And what are some of the challenges you faced? And what are some of the tools, right? Because we want to leave people with tools, right? We just don't want to talk about the issues, but we want to leave people with practical tools, right? That they can go away with. So what has that journey been like for you?
Great question. So I was saying when we had the, backstage conversation, and I kept thinking about it even after it was over, that, the foundation for who I have become is very connected to the family I was raised in. And I've taken that understanding with me everywhere, and it's impacting the way that I'm raising my own children and the kind of context I'm setting up in my family life, because it feels like it was just, in a way, my parents were automating the woman I was becoming. You see, to be honest, it was until I got into the university that I first ever heard that a girl was marginalized or she was like disadvantaged. It was when I got into university, and people would be like, oh, when they would say, is it because she's female? I'll be like, but that's the advantage, right? We got off with many gifts than my brothers did. So I look back and I'm thinking,
Where was the
how did it brainwash us into this sense of power as girls? That was what my parents were intentional about doing. So I have never been able to associate my gender with disadvantage. In fact, until I started to get into policy work the last decade, did it become so apparent that the degree of patriarchy in our culture is deeply ingrained and is even impacting policies and the way we show up. So the journeys look like, first of all, being handed a very strong sense of identity.
Absolutely.
Yes. And then going on and maintaining that posture, of knowing that I've been given a gift, I am a gift, and I want to unlock the gifts in others. So it's been a path of purpose, intentionally living true to self and true to the convictions that I carry about who I am and the role I want to play in the world. And then getting on into the journey into becoming a coach, a counselor, a consultant, working with a lot of women. I think that the three biggest lessons that have been most impactful in my life, and I've also passed on to women, and I've seen it working for them a lot, from marriage to motherhood to career, business. The first is really breaking your own bias against yourself. And that's why I started off and said, look, there's that lens of just your own, like Ijoma called it, self-governance, where you really have to govern yourself, and you need self-efficacy.
Yes.
You need agency. You need to go where you want to go.
Absolutely.
And you need to break your own bias. And the truth is, our personalities, the thing about personality is that there are things you have that you don't need in your personality.
Absolutely.
That can take you where you want to go. And there are things you don't have that you need. Do you see? So it just gets you into this journey of a flow where you're like, where am I heading? What should I be letting go that can serve me? What should I be acquiring for where I want to go?
Absolutely.
And I keep passing that on to women, and it's been impactful.
Right.
Any woman can get out of any mess, and any woman can step into any miracle. You see, you can do that.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is just the power of a catalytic community. You have to intentionally set yourself up in a space that have people who are living the kind of future you desire. You must do this one. You must look around you and find people who validate your vision of the future, that this thing is possible, it can be done. You need that. And then the third is to denounce the dysfunction of superwoman. And you've got to do it for yourself. I've been there where I was living to prove a point unconsciously in my marriage. Like I have this thing on lockdown. I don't have it on lockdown.
No.
Olga, you're going to help here. I stopped having it on lockdown.
Yes.
Who gave us this thing? And that whole superwoman frame is drawn from a dysfunction.
Absolutely.
It's drawn from an inferiority. You're trying too hard,
Yes.
to prove that you're this powerful person. So the average African woman doesn't understand vulnerability because it's either that if you're vulnerable, someone is going to use it against you. If you're vulnerable, you're going to be perceived as
Because you're already weak, the weaker sex,
You're
aren't
already
you?
exactly
So, displaying weakness
again.
Yeah.
You see. So even the whole boss lady
Yes.
concept, I tread with caution around it. I'm powerful, I'm visionary, I'm a legacy leader, but I don't know about that boss lady thing. A woman should be able to, so here's how I'd say it. I denounced the dysfunction of superwoman and I stepped into the power of my femininity.
Absolutely. I love it. Give her a round of
Yeah.
applause, people. All right, so Oyemi, let's come to you. What are the challenges that you have faced as a mother, and how have you navigated them?
I'd say that I was a mother before I became a mother, right? Because I had
Biologically.
Yeah, but from perspective, I had seen it done by aunties and mummies. I had also assisted in the process. So, and the reason I said that is because before a mother becomes a mother, how she will mother is already being shaped, right? She's already becoming. She's in the process before she actually goes through the biological process.
Right.
And we concentrate a lot on the biological process.
Right.
And we forget that the conversation has already been shaped before the woman comes to.
Absolutely.
And so for me, I think my biggest lesson, I had the privilege of parents who cared and were intentional. My father was an advocate for me. He gave me the advantage of my femininity. He gave me my power in conversations. If you kept quiet, the question was, why? Are you not a thinking woman?
Wow.
You must think. You must open your mouth. You must engage. You are alive for this reason, to engage, to impute, to pour out value. So there was never that perspective of, I need to shrink, I need to go behind, And my mom also mirrored it in a very different way. She owned her own motherhood. She shaped, even down to how she disciplined us. So you would never hear a negative word. As she was doing it, you're going to mother your children. So because you're going to do that, you're going to have to think, and I'm going to enable that thinking in you.
Right.
That kind of thing. So by the time I was a mother, I already sort of had a playbook that I was using.
good.
But I think the biggest thing for me was I had said to myself, being a mother will not be an interruption. Because there's that whole framework, like when motherhood happens to you, you must stop. You must enter a nucleus. You must own the parenting. You are the mother. Everything is on your shoulder. No. I was already calling my participators and actors to, it's duty time. It's time to, okay, what role are you ready to play? What are we doing? How are we going? I sought help. I sought support. And so it was a beautiful journey for me. I didn't have my children at the time that I wanted them. So even when they came, I had even increased knowledge. My husband and I had grown in the experience. And I think that's what everyone needs to, understand. Motherhood is not an interruption. You have the choice to frame how you want to mother. So be flexible, engage, enjoy the process.
Seek help.
And seek help.
But Ijoma, are you a superwoman? Or are you seeking help? Which category are
you?
you?
Ask that question because I have no issues with help. I have help, and that's why I'm here. It's almost time to pick up my kids, but if I didn't have help, I wouldn't.
Reality.
Yeah, it's the reality of it. But I remember when I first had my son, I was in corporate world, and I think it was 3 months after I was supposed to come back from maternity leave. And to be honest, it wasn't easy for me. It was tough. It was very tough. And because I just didn't even know I didn't have examples to look at around me. I was the first of a lot of my friends to have kids. There was no
Playbook.
yeah, there was no playbook, especially for this times that we're in. And I really struggled. And I came back from my maternity leave and found out that my department didn't exist anymore.
Sure.
Yes. So I was navigating having to find another job with also having a baby. And, it was just a lot. But one thing I'll say is obviously help is very important. Help is necessary to take you to where you need to be. And also having the right people around you who, I was saying backstage, it's so important that you know that there's a gap, right? You're a first-time mom, so you know there's a gap and there's a lot for you to learn. So just understanding that and being able to navigate that. So I did struggle, but what has helped me is structure. I think putting the right structures in place, putting the right people in place to help you. Navigate the things that you do. So my mom, my mother-in-law, they're always there to support, but just having the right structures helps you navigate that. Yeah.
So DDK, let's talk about how society can shift its perception of women as leaders. And really, let's just deal with this bias and stereotype that this thing, it's okay for a woman to be a nurturer and a carer, but it's not okay for her to be a leader. I keep questioning, how do all of us say that our mothers are the pillars of the home, best thing that ever happened? And then it's difficult for us to elect women. What is that missing gap? So how can we contribute to society shifting its perception of women as leaders?
That's such a huge question that we could even build a curriculum around it and start to unpack it. And I must just take a moment to say that I'm truly proud of you and the work that is going on, over here, so because this is the conversation to have. And hopefully we're able to use the power of the media to intentionally just shift society and shape new narratives. And we have to be patient. That is going to take some time.
Absolutely.
But one of the things that I find to be impactful about the journey to shaping narratives is we have to have champions of narratives. And what that looks like is everyone is listening, and I'm so glad about the audience as well. This is an intentional injection of right thinking into the next generation. So every woman who interacts with light, who interacts with counsel about the kind of leadership that shapes the future and how to, turn on your feminine powers and energy, how to collaborate effectively, how to own your space and your voice. Every time a woman accesses counsel, you must become a champion of change. You must then take what you know and what you believe, even if it's counterculture, and start to live that way. That is what is going to really get us where we want to go.
Right.
I'm feeling mildly discouraged about the, proliferation of courses, coaching, events, conferences, summits, talk shows, books, resources, sort of helping women see differently, and they're owning it and saying, yes, this is so valuable. I will be different, but they're not going into their space. It's not translating.
Right.
It's not translating.
And so we're not becoming the role modeling piece where I'm seeing it all around me and it's becoming normalized.
Yes.
Is not happening.
Yes. Because how does society earn a perception? How does society become loyal to a paradigm? The first is actually what society is repeatedly exposed to.
That's right.
Exactly. So how did we associate patriarchy to leadership? How do we think about leadership and it's a man that comes to us? That was what was modeled again and again and again. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if we want to shift, we have to become champions of that change.
And actually start to show differently.
Yeah, exactly.
Show up differently. I love it.
Yes.
So, Ijoma, what do you see? What can we do? And I feel like in your case, what I'd like you to talk about is there are different stratas of people who need to contribute to this shift, right? They're organizing. So it's individual level, institutional level, systemic level, because these are all the ways that it shows up. How can we start to shift this perception?
I think from an individual perspective, I think is what we've all been sharing here, is women understanding that they can do it, that it is possible to be a leader and be a mom. And they're not mutually exclusive, right? It's possible to do it. And I think that mindset helps even shape their children as well, because they see them doing things in a certain way and they also believe they can do it. So that's on that level. On the institutional level, I would say that we need a lot more awareness. So it looks like it doesn't exist, but then when you go into the systems, you see that it actually does, right? The biases and the stereotypes, they do exist. Last year, I had a workshop for an organization, and the discoveries was very interesting. It was on gender biases and stereotypes in the workplace. What we uncovered was very interesting. It's not something that people even think, you don't even understand the depths of it.
Absolutely.
Right? And what we did was scenario planning. So we put people in a situation and made someone not understand what was going on in that space. How did you feel about it? So it shows, when you don't feel included in something.
Right.
So they were able to see, what that looks like.
Yeah.
And so, not to say, it was a gender situation. So it showed the men how the women feel when, they're being stereotyped or they're being excluded from conversations that matter, from, men have their locations where they go and talk about work. And then they come back into the office and the women are like,
What went on?
I missed the conversation.
Yeah.
And so, creating those scenarios where people understand how it feels as well.
Right.
And it also heightens their understanding of what is going on. Because a lot of times their awareness, people don't even realize that
Yes.
they're doing what they're doing.
Yes.
So how do you make that clear?
Unconscious bias.
isn't it?
Unconscious,
Yes.
completely unconscious. How clear? How do you make it clear? And I think it's a lot of advocacy. It's a lot of intentional conversations.
Right.
The conversations have to be intentional.
Absolutely.
On the
Yeah, go ahead.
what's the last level again? Systemic level.
Yeah.
I would say quotas for leadership. We need quotas. The end. It is necessary.
Period.
Period. We need quotas. Because if we don't have women in the House of Reps, if we don't have women in the Senate, if we don't have women in those places, House of Assembly, where the decisions are being made, there's nothing that would, do you get what I mean? It won't favor us.
Yes.
And we have the ability, and I'm not saying just women, I'm saying that generally women are nurturers, right? So we have the ability to think in a community. And so we're not just thinking, there's a saying that if you train a woman,
Train a
you
village.
train her, a village, right? Or if you raise a woman up, you raise her community, raise the people around her. So we need that to be able to put in place the policies that make things better for women. We can't negate the fact that, the systemic level is required to transform. As much as we can transform on an individual level and we can stand and fight, you will find that in some other parts of the world, women are able to move further than we are, right? Not because we are not strong.
Trying.
Yeah, or not because we're not trying. It's the systems.
It's the systems. So, a lawyer, tell us, how do we get the legislation? And is that one of the ways that we can potentially shift perceptions of mothers as leaders?
Yeah, legislation is important. Legislation frames what we can do or what we can't. But I like to always share this perspective around how laws work, right? Laws do not exist in a vacuum. They exist within the context that society gives it. So if you attack legislation and you don't attack culture, legislation is powerless, right? So we have laws that advocate for women. We have the Child Rights Act. We have violence.
Gender policy.
Exactly. The Violence Against Person
With Disability Act.
All these acts are, and when we look at the indices of our realities, they don't mirror what those laws say.
That's right.
Right? So you can simply say the conversation is do what the law says and then it's done. But why don't people do what the law says? It's because culture is powerful.
Right.
Right? And what shapes culture? Thought. Thought actually shapes culture. And we forget that the mother is at the helms of shaping the thinking of a child, right? And while she's shaping the thinking of a child, we exclude her from all of the other things that have to deal with how we shape thought, how we build people, how we move towards human capital. So we sort of put that box here, and everything else we plug her out of it. That's not a system.
So there's a disconnect.
Yes, that's not a system.
She can't offer what she doesn't have.
Yes, a system must create flow, right? So plug in family to community to nation. And what you would see is that you empower the mother in the home,
Yes.
empower her in the workplace, empower her in government, empower her in society from how
Right.
she's treated.
Yes.
What is said about her, what people do to her. So mothers the nation is built on the back of the mother, but when it's time to make decisions, she's not there.
not part of
How
it.
is that possible? That doesn't make sense. How men think about women and mothers is also shaped by this whole, so you said patriarchy, but then there's some form of complicit action by women as
good.
well
Yes.
into that system of patriarchy. Because why do they have this perspective? How do we raise our boys? Boys are excluded from nurturing activities. Yes, a woman is a nurturer. It's an advantage. It's something that she uses. She can nurture as a lawyer. She can nurture as a governor.
Yes.
Nations are made from nurturing. Nations are also nurtured. So nurturing is not for the house or the kitchen. Nurturing is also in government. Policies are some form of nurture, right? So let us move this whole nurturing conversation out of the house.
Yeah.
Let us find nurturers in the workplace. Let us find nurturers in government. Let's find nurturers. And that's how we complete the conversation.
Absolutely.
So law must marry the flow. It must marry culture.
Oh, I'm so good. So good. I mean, I think that's a really good point to take a break, but we'll continue the conversation when we get back. Welcome back to the show. We're having a really, really enlightening conversation with our guests. So I want to come to you, DDK. There's somebody who's watching us now and saying, it's easy for them to talk, I know what I'm going through. So how have you balanced motherhood and leadership as DDK? Because we know all the things that you do. And for many women, when they try to do more, they hit brick walls, criticism. People call them names. They're up against family. So how have you balanced, what can a woman who's watching this take away from you?
Oh, that's a great question. I hope I would get a chance to come back and say a few things to what my sisters have shared around advocacy and, the work that we could do on that systemic policy level. But to this question, and it really just touches my heart very deeply, I have a keen recognition, maybe also because of my work, of some of the challenges that women are faced with. And some are in very difficult contexts, and my heart reaches out to every woman who is constantly up against odds, sort of seeking to move her vision forward while still in that very prestigious role of being a mother. And the first thing that I would say, Abosede, is that my reality is a bit different. And I want to acknowledge.
Yes, your privilege,
Yes,
whatever that is.
Indeed, I want to acknowledge my privilege, because we can't even have a conversation that is inclusive if you do not acknowledge your privilege.
That's right.
And how it sort of shapes your own reality and opportunities. So I do have great support in my life, and I'm established on a great degree of agency, both that which is drawn from my natural inclination and personality. I have a strength of soul that is almost indivisible from who I am. So it also even shows up in how it is tough for you to talk me down, because I treat praise and criticism almost alike. I'm not blown away by your appreciation of my person. So why would I be blown away by your discrediting of my person? So I am, and I think even though it's a gift that I've also continued to nurture, it can also be a tool that I would love to put in the hands of women.
Absolutely.
That you really need to grow that agency. But things that everybody can use, let me speak to those. What has helped that balance between motherhood and leadership? The first is that, and I love when OEME was like, there's no system without a flow.
Yes.
I'm living in the flow. I haven't always been there, but in the course of the last 5 years, I have stopped being fixated on how I want things to be and where I want to go and how fast I want to get there. So I've had seasons where it felt slower and I felt less accomplished and I gave up on opportunities, but I felt like it was the right thing to do.
At that time.
At that time, I was responding more to my seasons, responding more. So, and the reason I really want to say this is because I do find when women sit with me and they're in this agitation of soul and they feel like, DDK, there's more, and I feel so alone, I feel so left out. What I often find is that they were anyway hardwired to win in life, but they just needed to wait out a certain season.
Right.
Yeah, and just,
Right.
so the moment you feel like it's motherhood that is holding me back from succeeding, you're not going to be a great mother in that season. And it's almost like a cycle.
Yes.
And you're not going to be able to press into what's next.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's almost a lose-lose.
It's a lose-lose.
Yeah.
So I feel like women also have to ensure that their drive for success is not powered by the poison of society. Because you see everybody doing one big thing or the other.
You see a mother
another mother
killing it. And you
securing
think,
the bag.
I just need to kill it too. But you don't know
Everything in that
everything that's behind.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Brilliant.
So living in the flow.
Living in the flow.
Living in the flow. Two more things, even though
Yeah.
if I can break it down in more detail. The second is what Ijoma spoke about. This one, every single woman, I don't care what your personality is like, have to make the investment till they become a master at structure. I'm telling you. The whole concept of building a thing is connected to structure.
That's right.
What's got to be laid on the foundation, how you move to up till you get to the decking, the roofing, everything. So a woman has to see herself as a legacy architect.
Right.
You have to. Motherhood is less emotional and more strategic. I'm
I hear
telling
you.
Yeah, because a time
with you.
comes when your children don't want mommy again. They want a mentor and a matriarch. And you have to be thinking about when that day comes.
And that puts you in a constant flow
Yes.
of evolution.
So good. Because who you are as a mother to a 4-year-old is going to be different from who you had to be as a mother to a 14-year-old.
I testify.
So every woman has to grow that
Master
mastery. You have
structure.
to master it. It may come natural for some, it may not come for some. But when I step into your home and I see chaos, I'm just afraid for you. You may be winning on the outside, writing the books, getting the deals, and you have a big following. I don't see that as success. I want to step into the context of your family.
I'll take you back on that. Are men judged in the same way though?
So good.
Yes.
That's
Are men
okay.
judged in the same way where they're winning at home, like in the office, bringing in the deals? Is anybody looking, taking the curtain and saying, is he a good husband?
So good.
And is he beating his wife? Or he just shows up here and
Solid
speaks?
question.
Do you know what I mean?
Solid question.
Yes.
Yes. And thank you for bringing that out.
Of course.
Having said that, where I stand when I speak to women is often not in relation to the men in their lives. And maybe that's
I appreciate
not
that.
balanced.
And I hope people understand that.
Yeah. I'm often just saying you as a person.
Yes.
To attain full potential, you see, these are things you have to have going for you. And I'm not saying I don't want to see chaos because I'm thinking you are solely responsible for having a family life that is
Good.
excellent. I'm just
Good.
saying do your part.
And do it well.
And do it well. Do that part well.
I love it.
Yes.
I love
and
it.
the final part
Yes.
I must speak to is cut the mommy guilt. There's a way a woman can...
But it's real though. Mommy
It's
guilt
real.
is a thing.
Mommy guilt is a huge thing.
Oh my
Maybe I
goodness.
should say it in a gentler, more healing way.
Let's hear it.
Navigate the mommy guilt.
Okay.
Right?
Because it's real.
It's real. And, it's realer for women who are unable to go out there and do stuff. And they say it's society and system and patriarchy, but it's just them. You can't travel. I remember many times I'll be on the plane and I'll be crying because
Yes.
I'm just like,
I testify again.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a thing.
it's a thing.
Yeah. So what you're saying is be kind to yourself.
Be kind to yourself.
Be kind to yourself.
you're
I
doing
love it.
good.
I love it. So, Oyemi, have you balanced motherhood and leadership?
Yeah, I'm happy that you asked me the same question because I wanted to piggyback on something she said. I feel that and it's important to say this, motherhood is not parenting, right?
Ooh.
And we have that context where we say mother and parent are synonyms. They're not. There are other actors. And I think that one part of being a mother is holding everybody else accountable to play their role. And it's a place.
Solid. That's even a leadership attribute.
Oh my God! It's a place of strength that we don't play a lot, right? Because everybody says, carry your burden, it's your burden. All burdens are not mine.
So good.
And I will not sit down and say, I will carry your burden and you will not know about it. You must know. And so I think women must begin to not call out the men, because it's not a call out, it's a call in. Right?
Invite.
Come and, yes, come and do this. This is your role. It's a part. Life was never designed in any form. If you go to trees and flowers, animals, there is no system of life that involves one actor.
That's right.
So why do we, when we come into the context of motherhood, create that super actor
Independent
that
actor.
excludes everybody else? A father is a parent. In Nigeria and Africa, a father is a parent. That is the original design. I wish I could just be shouting, father is a parent, father is
Yes.
It's unbelievable how you call for school events.
No, I just
and
wanted
only
to
the
tell you.
mother shows up.
You
The
know, they
father-
send messages and say, dear mommies. And I'm
No.
Dear mommies.
So as a system,
I don't understand.
Yeah.
You are trying to read the parents of the children. Dear
Absolutely.
mommies.
So as a system, right, we need to come to that consciousness.
Yes.
Where in fact, if the mother is not aware, everybody is helping her to say, oh yeah, call the other
actors.
people, you know? So that's one thing that I think, and that's what I have done to help me. I ask for help. So when I would be a little vulnerable here. So when I was pregnant, my husband said to me, I don't understand what's going on with you. So I need you to pinch me and say, this is time for you to act, right? And so I would say, he said, because you're the one going through the physiological experience,
Right.
but invite me in. And so I'll say, I need you to do this for me. I articulate the duty and we walk through it together. And I think if a lot
I really
more,
appreciate that because
a
he's
lot-
saying I don't
yes.
read minds.
Yeah.
I can't relate.
Yes.
Because it's not my lived experience.
Yes. So
But then you invite him in.
Yes.
I love it.
So that's my own version.
I love it. Ijoma.
Yeah,
hit us with
I'll
it.
first make a comment with what Oyeyemi said. I realized that I didn't even think that way because my husband is, when there's extra involved, that sometimes it'll be like, oh, where is the mom? Like my husband is very involved. But it now makes me really understand how they also haven't been, well, they
Socialized
haven't-
into it. Yeah.
they haven't been socialized into it, so they don't know. But one thing I would say is, in terms of navigating the two, right, motherhood and leadership, I would say that it's understanding the seasons. And GDK spoke a bit to it. And when I say understanding the seasons, for the past, I think, 6 years from last year, I was either pregnant or breastfeeding, right? So literally, that was my life. And I was so hard on myself in terms of what I was expecting from a leadership perspective. And it's just now that I've come out of it that I've started to have perspective. Like, okay, you didn't need to be that hard on yourself.
Right.
Now you can fly, right? There are times when, in a child's life, I've researched and I've seen that between 0 to 4, you're supposed to be like, disciplinarian. Between 4 and a certain age, you're supposed to be like a coach. And after a certain age, you're supposed to be a mentor. After that, it keeps changing your role. So understanding in this stage that I'm in, what is the role, or my kids are in, what is the role that I'm supposed to play? And then when you understand that role, it helps you have less of the mom guilt, right? Because that mom guilt is real. I mean, when you were talking about it, I was like, I have mom guilt every day. It doesn't even matter what I'm doing. I'm even there with them and I'm having mom guilt, right? So I like the fact that we've spoken about not just eliminating the mom guilt, but learning to navigate that as well.
Absolutely. So, DDK, what support systems do we need to have in place as society to help women not only attain leadership, but remain in leadership and then, of course, aspire for higher levels of leadership. And why I say this, I mean, you do public policy. You know, that area of government is just like immediately you sign up, you have traded off your entire home
Everything.
fronts.
Everything.
So what should the system look like? And you wanted to speak to that, you know, the institutional. What is the design supposed to
The
look like?
design.
Where women can then be in their flow, and not just me, you, and everybody here, but a lot more women. What does that design look
Oh,
like?
solid. So I'll start off with what Ijoma highlighted. In fact, maybe in the course of the last 7 years, every well-meaning, forward-thinking economy and political system of countries have devoted themselves intentionally to representation.
Right.
Right? So the matter of quota is what it is. Of course, there is a new rot that is brewing in that space where it feels like some women are coming into opportunities that they are not prepared for and they do not merit. But because there's a requirement for gender representation, we just have to make up for the numbers. And that just hurts on a different level, like,
Yes.
hey, no, that's
Yes.
not what we mean. We want the best and the finest,
Yes.
representing us and being in leadership. But we still need that quota system. It's almost like the demonstration of political will, if it's in the context of governance, or executive will, if it's in the context of institutions and
That's right.
workplaces, where we start to say, this is the percentage. We must have a certain percentage of women within our boards and, leadership roles and representing us and constituents, in government. So we have to start to advocate for that. What I find is we are, and I'm saying this with a lot of caution, but I mean it. I feel like we are now in a time where the governments of African countries are a lot more open to private sector advisory and support. I see that everywhere I've gone. I've consulted on public policy for almost 10 African countries. And you see that, I'm consulting for other African governments. And they're open to receiving a non-citizen to come in and provide counsel
Advise,
and
yes.
advise. And I see that even with Nigeria's government on different tiers.
So there's an opportunity
There's
there.
an opportunity there for those who have answers. Ijoma is doing a lot of work in sort of shifting how
Private sector
institutions and,
organizations.
private sector organizations are owning an inclusive, more gender-oriented lens, etc. So the first thing I see is that executive or political will
Yeah.
to set up the quota system again. And we had that in the past. And we start to insist that we will bring a certain number of women into leadership. That's the first.
Yeah.
The second is those who are in the advocacy spaces have to gun for big wins. What that looks like is if there is any policy that we're trying to, push for
Yeah.
in institutions, go to the multinationals, go to the big brands, and stay there. Knock down on the decision makers till you get what you want, because you will get what you want. And the moment you start to also train the internal champions to work with you and carry on the conversations, when it happens, the likelihood for a small business, an SME, you see, an emerging brand to buy into a philosophy becomes stronger when
Right.
the big, I've seen this work.
Right.
So with advocacy, don't just be on social media ranting or being upset. Become strategic and give it time. Engage a 3-year plan, and start to look at the big corporates and sell this ideology of caring for women. So when we get in there, what do we sell? 3 things. You sell the quota system. Number 2, you sell a more hybrid, flexible
Working.
work
Culture.
and model. And we can now ride the wave of what is happening post the pandemic. There is a lot more fluidity and
Yes.
dynamism in the way that we do work. So let's sell that. Women are always going to need that.
Right.
If a woman finds a way not to be in a physical office 9 to 5, 5 days a week or 6 days a
She'll
week,
take it.
She'll take it. She'll always take it,
Yeah.
you see. Of course, there's a whole different conversation about upskilling
Accountability,
into how to be a remote worker,
work
accountability,
tools.
the
Yeah.
work tools, managing technology and managing time,
Yes.
logging in for real and getting the work done, all of those things.
Yes.
And then the third thing that you sell is storytelling, promoting stories about women who are winning. Just so you're breaking down the stereotypes that we have as well
Yes.
about what is possible.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I
So
love it.
Those are things we should
I
start
love
to think
it.
about.
So unfortunately, time has gone by really fast. So let me hear your final thoughts, Oyemi, about, whatever it is that you want to talk about how we really help women attain, remain, and continue to go into leadership across all levels, to be honest.
So let me take it from this angle, and I'll be adding to the sundry list that she's already given us. We, all actors, government, private sector, and the individuals must see the role of the motherhood and how it flows into our system as a human capital resource. Right? Because if you see it as a human capital resource, then what do you do to your resources? You use them, you shape them, you nurture them, you grow them, you multiply them, right? It's because we don't see it as a human capital problem yet that we plug it out. And let me show you how it works. So your employees tomorrow will be people trained by that mother, right? And in the workspace, you and I know that the issues are not necessarily the technical capacity, because that can be science. You can almost automate that. Yes. It's those soft issues, how the person thinks, how the person, addresses issues, the mental attitude of the person that either totally ground the organization or gives it wings to fly.
Right.
And so if we see it as a resource, then we're going to look at how we resource mothers. I work in an organization that just changed paternity leave to 1 month. There's no science backing that in many of the advocacy courses. But the reason they did it was because a woman will need assistance
Yes.
by her partner.
Yes.
So let us increase the capacity of the partner to help the woman so that she can. So they saw it as a human resource issue, and they plugged in the solution that would enable that. So if we think about it, so creches, nursing stations will not be economic decisions alone. They will be human capital resourcing,
Productivity that can help the
decisions.
productivity
So
of
you'll be able to plug the bottom line to how it works.
So good.
And if we plug bottom line on the private sector, we can also plug national vision, national sustainability,
Yes.
also governance and power,
Yes.
competition between states. All of those things can be plugged in because you have seen it as a human resource. And I think if we shape the conversation like that, there's a natural muscle that will be awakened in everyone to enable that process, even down to the children, to the partners, to the politicians,
I see.
right?
I love
So
it.
if we have that kind of conversation and we own it that way, I think that's what we shape.
I love it. The
conversation.
reframing is so
Yes.
powerful. Ijoma, what would be your final thoughts?
Yeah, so I'll speak to the low-hanging fruits that exist. I think that we need to address the systemic level from a collective perspective. So we have 5 gender bills, right,
Yes.
that were rejected.
Yes.
And I find that a lot of female organizations are sort of looking for how they can play a role, but coming collectively and saying, you know what, in the next 2 to 3 years, this is our agenda. We're going to change that. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I find that a lot of women organizations, women-led organizations are doing a lot for women, right? But a lot of it is not getting the level of impact that I think is required to change what is really going on. And I feel like if we come collectively and say, you know what, this is the one agenda we're going to focus on for the next 2 to 3 years, I think that will make a significant change. Because I feel like on the systemic level, we need to start there. I know that we've spoken individually. We've spoken on the corporate level. We've seen that some corporate organizations are now introducing mother's room, nursing rooms. I know a lot of organizations that are doing that now. But I feel like, that collective action is required in saying, you know what, focus is key. This is where we're going to focus on for the next couple of years. If we have women in leadership, it will make a massive difference.
Absolutely.
In shaping the way that society sees women. We need more role models, right?
Absolutely.
We need our children to say, you know what, I can be
I
president.
can be president
I want my
because
daughter to be able to say,
have seen it
I have
before.
seen examples, yeah.
I love it.
And those examples make such a great difference,
Yes.
a big difference to how children are their perception and the way they see leadership as well. They would see it as, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yes.
But that is the representation that they've seen. So how can we shift that? And I think that we should start on that level.
Yes.
And we already have a pathway, right? We can go back collectively, because I find a lot of people are doing one thing here and there, but I'm not seeing that, grand impacts that would actually shake things and move things, right?
Really
So,
was.
yeah.
I love it. Wow. Please give them a round of applause. I mean, this conversation has been both enriching, enlightening, but as a mother who is a leader, it has been liberating for me. And I'm really, really glad that we had the opportunity with our guests to have this conversation. Now, we'll take a short break, but when we get back, we'll go into our gaming segment, Misrepresented. It's time for our gaming segment, Misrepresented. Today we'll be playing the game Build Your Board. Earlier, members of the audience were giving an assignment to build their board, where they select leaders from a pool of people provided to them, as displayed right now on our screens to the right and to the left. Now, I'd like to welcome representatives from Team A and Team B. We have Eunice and Bola. Now, let's start with Team A. Director, can you please display what board they built? Wow. Eunice, do you want to talk us through your board?
Okay, I chose her because number one, she's a leader to me. Because you said earlier that any woman can be a leader, and she has the attribute of being a leader, and she has the ability to manage all this. She have the ability to manage our company. And why I chose him as a CEO, because of his competence.
And what I also observe is, so you have 4 women and 4 men on your board. Fantastic. Please give her a round of applause. Now, Team B, let's come over to you. Tell us a little bit about the board that you built.
Okay, so on my team, I didn't go with a lady as the chairman because I feel that a lady is better as the CEO. Because now, if we're looking at it, the chairman is the one basically in charge. But the CEO also has a lot of duties, and she's basically a thinker for everybody because they all report to her. Then she takes it to the chairman. So if the CEO doesn't appreciate or accept anything someone says, she just tries to correct everything, and then she takes it to the chairman. So the CEO is the one basically making the decisions for the company. So that's why I went with a CEO. I'm the woman as my CEO and the man as my chairman.
Please give her a round of applause. Now remember that there is no right or wrong answer to this game. We'll leave the audience and viewers watching to deliberate on which team's boardroom is most likely to succeed. And on this note, we would like to thank our distinguished guests for joining us on today's episode. Thank you to Ijoma Adesoya, Barrister Oyeyemi Emmanuel Aderibibe, and Debola Deji Kurumi. We appreciate you for being a part of this episode. And of course, to our live audience, you have been simply amazing. To our viewers watching today's episode, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us across all social media platforms at Will and Global, like, share, and leave us a comment. Until next week, remember that women's leadership can change everything, everywhere. Bye for now.